And now I'm going to get started on the sides. Look how pretty this wood is. So I'm sure you know this, but just to kind of review the basics, this wood is book matched. In other words, it's cut on a bandsaw like this, and then that piece drops off, and they cut this one, and then when you put these together, you can see that you can tell they came from the same slab. So now, because they're book matched, if you take and turn it around, that's how you want to align it on the guitar. Of course, you could come on this end and do it that way, whichever, and that looks pretty damn good right there, doesn't it? But again, that's the book matched effect, and the way you want to keep all of that in mind when you're laying out the guitar. And part of the layout is, of course, the sides are tapered. They're taller in the back than they are in the front, and I have this tapering, this jig that matches the contour of my Martin. And what I did was I took a tape measure and I taped it to the very top or to the bottom of the guitar, because the top of the guitar is flat. And I measured in millimeters the distance from the top to the bottom, and then I would move over 1 inch and measure that distance, move over 1 inch, and I did that in 1 inch increments all the way down the guitar. Then I came back and measured from here up to here to match those 1 inch measurements, and then I cut this to that. And of course, you got to keep in mind that on the guitar, the Martin, the top and the back is approximately 3.5 millimeters. So you have to subtract 7 millimeters from. So this template is actually 7 millimeters shorter than the top of the guitar, but that's just taking into account the top and the back thickness. On my guitars, I've thicknessed both of mine to 2.5 millimeters, so I will keep that in mind when I lay this out and cut it. I've used the template to lay out the contour of the sides, and I've taped them together. So I'll just make one pass, and you can see this wood is already starting to, I don't know if it's a little moisture or what, but this was laying flat when I first got it, so not a big deal. It'll be clamped up really tight. Anyways, I'm going to cut these sides right now. cut this really slow because I wanted to cut as close to my line as possible. Most of the times when you're cutting to a line, you leave about 1/8 of an inch or so. But in the past, I've always cut these about maybe 2 millimeters tall, and that creates a lot of work once the sides are glued up and you're trying to make everything come down to dimension. So there we go. And one last thing, normally when I buy these, I get rosewood. That's what I've always used in the past, and the rosewood comes in at about 3.5 millimeters, sometimes a little bit more than that thick, and I have to dimension it down to 2.5. These are here out of the box at 2.7 millimeters. So I think I'm going to leave these as is. I might run them through my thickness sander just to knock the top level off of it, the top level of fuzz, but these came very, very close to final dimension. So I ran my sides through the thickness sander. I know I'd said I was probably going to leave them, I think they were like 2.7 or 2.8, I think. But I went and looked at my notes, and I looked online at some specs on Gibson guitars. And so I brought them down to 2 millimeters, and I just sanded on one side because my sander just burns the hell out of that figured maple. So now I've got my heating blanket warming up. I've got it set to go to 300 degrees. At about 250, I will put the wood in there and start bending. I've got it wrapped in foil, and I will spritz it, get it real good and wet, and put it in the bender. Slowly bend it, let it sit there for about a half hour, and then I will put it in my full-size brace, or mold, I guess that is. So I just took this out, and it looks like it bent pretty well. Let's take a look and see. Like unwrapping a Christmas present. That looks good. So this block is the end block, and I've cut it to dimension, and I've actually made it about 3/32 of an inch taller than the side. So when I radius it, it'll give it a little bit of meat on the bone there to bring down to the side. I'll talk more about that when I do the radius, but I need to also put a radius on this, and because it's so thin, it's hard to hold up against the sander. So I just took some double-sided tape and taped me a block on here, and I'm going to try and match the radius that I've drawn on here, which matches the back radius of the guitar. Kind of looks like a rat trap here, but I have the head block clamped in place. I've got lots of clamping pressure on it, and because of all of these clamps, I'm just going to wait until this is dried, give it about an hour, then I'll come back and I'll glue on the back block. While I'm waiting for that back block to dry, and I have my side bender out, I'm going to tape these pieces of binding. This is ebony binding. I'm going to take these 4 strips, put a little piece of tape on them to hold them together. I'm going to go ahead and bend them now, even though I won't be obviously cutting the binding channels for a while, but I'll go ahead and bend them while I have the machine out. So I want to talk just a minute about the sides. In the past, I always would cut these sides on the bandsaw 3 or 4 millimeters tall. Then I would take a plane and I would plane down to this block. I would have this block and this tail block. I would have it cut to the final height that I wanted the sides to be. And then I would take a block plane and I would plane this down. And so then when you go to put this on your radius dish to sand it, as you start to sand, you know, the objective, this is going to have a bit of an angle on it. You can see that block has an angle because the dish on the back, you know, this goes that way. So to create this angle, the old way I was doing it, it would actually bring the sides down a little bit shorter than what my plans called for. And then I saw a video of a builder who said that he leaves these blocks just a tad oversized. In other words, a little bit taller than the side. So what I did was I took my side template and I adjusted it down to the exact height I wanted the sides to be, cut them to that, and then I left this and this block just a little bit taller. Maybe I actually left it too tall. I had to come in with the block plane and take a little bit off. So in the future, I think I'll maybe leave it 1.5 millimeters, maybe 2 millimeters tall. And that way, when you start sanding, the first things that are touching the sanding disc are these 2 blocks. And when these 2 blocks get down to the angle or the radius that you're looking for, that's when the sides begin to touch. And in no time, of course, you chalk all this up, and in no time, the sides leveled up much, much easier than what I've done in the past. So that's a new technique that I'm going to continue to use in the future. The sides have now been radius to the proper dimension, and it's time to install the kerfing. And the kerfing is exactly what it says. It's a piece of, I'm assuming this is mahogany, and these kerfs are cut in it, and they're cut almost to the bottom, and that allows flexibility so it will bend. And this is called a reverse kerfing, and this will glue to the inside of the guitar, and this gives you some surface area which to glue the top and back on. So I'm going to glue this on now. I've clamped on the first round of applying the kerfing, and I use these clothespins, but I wrapped some rubber bands around them to give them a little bit extra tension. And right here, when I was trying to measure how far I needed to go, that one broke off. And these are fragile, it happens all the time. So what I did was I took and just cut one, and I will fit that down in there like such with some glue, and you'll never even know that was missing. But you do need your kerfing to go all the way around and glue up to the tail block and the back block, or the front block. The kerfing has been glued in, and if you recall, the sides are at the proper height because I sanded those on the sanding dish. So when you glue the kerfing in, you leave the kerfing about the thickness of your fingernail, proud of the sides, taller than the sides. Chalk it up, put chalk on it, and then sand it, and that will sand it on that dish, and that will bring the kerfing down flush to the sides and at the proper radius. And then I'll turn it over and I'll do the same thing on the back using that 15-foot sanding dish over there. So next stop, more sanding. So again, the whole idea is to, I put some chalk around here, around the sides, on the kerfing, and start sanding, driving the bus, they call it. You know, if you're going to take all the time it takes to build a guitar, you want it to be beautiful. You want it to look as good as it can. But you also need to really pay attention to the things that the player will not see, and that's the inside of the guitar. You need it to look just as pretty as the outside. It just shows the craftsmanship, the love that went into building a guitar. And even though someone's not going to see this unless you just look through the sound hole, the builder knows that it's there. The builder knows he didn't do a good job. He didn't get the squeeze out, and he didn't, you know, you just, why put this much time and effort into building something and not do it as close to right as you can. That means taking the extra time. And you know, if you remember, this piece, when I ran it through the thickness sander, I only thicknessed on this side because I don't know if maybe my paper is old, but it burnt this wood, and so I only thicknessed from this side, but it's got to be cleaned up. So anyways, just some thoughts on the craftsmanship that goes behind something like this. So now I'm putting these side struts or side braces in place, and you know, this is just to give some more strength here. So if this wood splits, say if it were to split, it's only going to split from here to here. It's not going to split down the whole length. So you know, I cut them to length. Up here is the top, which is the flat section. I'll square that up. I'll put some glue, and then I'll use these clamps like this to clamp it down. So that concludes the sides, the bending of the sides, the gluing up the tail block and the head block, and putting in the reinforcement struts. So the next thing I will do is the end wedge, then we will attach the top and the back. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe and have a really nice day.